Hello, this is Alex Lockhart. I have recently interviewed Mikayla Lockhart, my wife, about hand lettering. And I asked some different questions about why she was doing it and what she was learning and how she was learning and some of the tricks she's learned to get better at it. She's just learning how to do it, so it's not like she's not a long time expert at it or anything, but sometimes it can be helpful to talk to people who are just learning something as opposed to an expert, as they can often give you insights that the expert might not think to give. So we get into hand lettering and the difference between that and calligraphy, and what she plans on using it for, and all sorts of other things. So I hope you'll enjoy it, and without any further ado, here is the interview. I want to talk about hand lettering, but my first question is, what's hand lettering, and what's the difference between hand lettering and calligraphy, or is there a difference?
I think there is a difference in the sense of what tools you use.
Okay.
So if you use a fountain pen or maybe like a feather, what do you use? It's
like a quill pen.
Yeah,
or
a
fountain
quill
pen. Yeah.
Quill pen or a fountain pen, I definitely think would be more geared towards calligraphy writing. But hand lettering and calligraphy really go hand in hand. They're very similar. In the sense of fancy writing, pretty. It's very picturesque writing, more for like the signs you see in Hobby Lobby, like the quotes that you see in Michael's or Hobby Lobby stores, things like that.
And so you said that for calligraphy, you'd like fountain pens and quill pens come to mind. What tools do you use for hand lettering?
I don't know the exact technical term, but they definitely are like a felt tip marker pen. The tip is flexible. You can get like a smaller, finer tip that's more solid, but it really depends on your preference and how you do it, which is what I learned when I took the hand lettering class. And I prefer the flexible one just because it's easier to maneuver and to write with.
Is there a benefit to the harder tipped one? Or is it just preference?
I think it's preference, but I also think it depends on how fine of a detail you want. So like say you're doing your hand lettering and then you wanted to maybe add some detailed accents or whatever, you would use the harder, smaller, fine point tip.
Okay. So what kind of well, I suppose there's a lot of different things you could do, but what do you have in mind to do with hand lettering?
I think my goal would to be to eventually master hand lettering with like paint pens and things like that, because you can use hand lettering with pretty much anything.
So what's a paint pen? Is it just like paint, but like
it's in like it looks like a pen, but when you open the cap, it's like you push down and paint comes out of it.
Okay.
Yeah. Just because like if you go to a Hobby Lobby store, I mean, obviously you can, at Hobby Lobby you always have like a 40% coupon, so like your signs aren't super expensive. Like it's not an arm and a leg to buy a decor sign, but I always thought it would be cool to just like go to Lowe's, buy super cheap wood, glue it together, stain it, and just be able to make my own signs.
Okay.
And then I could just switch them out seasonally if I wanted to, or do whatever I wanted with them, really. Just, I enjoy decor, so.
So essentially decor is what you have in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Now, something that just came to mind is I remember when you were doing the wreaths, you did like the wood, like, I don't know what you call it, blocks in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
and you'd put like words on there, but it was a hard process because you had to like copy the prints onto the wood, or you had to use like a cutout machine. I don't even know what that's called.
Well,
That cuts out the paper. But I suppose now you could do hand lettering.
Yeah, I think it would definitely depend on the wood, though, because if you don't have a smooth surface, it's obviously going to be a lot more difficult to do hand lettering.
Yeah. Well, you could finish the surface, right?
Yeah. It's just a lot of the pieces that I would buy were already put together, like from Walmart. So you'd have like the little...
Oh, and then you'd hand letter on top.
Mm-hmm. And then I'd attach them to the wreath. And because those were more rustic pieces, they were rougher. So I would always use stencils and do it very slowly, and most of them would have like last names. And if I didn't stencil, I would use a pencil first, and then I would, paint the rest inside of the letters, and then add some detail, like some leaves or flowers or whatever.
Yeah.
Whoever I was making it for, whatever they wanted.
So it kind of seems like hand lettering is something that if you learn the skill, it can help you do a lot of different artistic things.
Oh yeah, you could apply it to sewing. I learned as a young girl how to embroider. My grandma taught me. And things like that, like if I wanted to embroider, like say, a name onto a shirt or a jacket, I would be able to do that, because basically what you do is you're stenciling with a pencil, or like a lighter pen, probably the smaller one. I could embroider pretty much whatever.
So to do that, would you do the hand lettering on like some sort of paper or something, and then create the stencil from that? Like cut out a stencil? How would you transfer?
No, because what you would do is you start out with fabric. So whatever fabric, because every embroidered piece actually has a back and then a front. So most embroidered pieces have they start out with white fabric, like basic white fabric. You use an embroidery hoop, and then you can use, like I said, you can use pencil. It's best to use like lighter colors.
Okay.
So it's it doesn't show up as much when you pull the thread through.
Oh, okay.
So, but you have to
because you do the pattern and then you thread through the pattern.
Yeah, and you could use a stencil, but I mean, if you can do it quickly, free-handed, why not just do that?
Yeah.
Versus taking the extra step with the stencil.
Yeah, well, and it makes you more flexible because you don't have to rely on somebody else's. You don't have to rely on finding a stencil that does what you want.
Yeah.
You can just do whatever you want. I could even imagine like with paintings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could do like canvas signs.
Yeah.
Easy. You could paint a picture and add a quote to it on canvas. You could even do simple things like transfer pictures onto wood, and then add a quote to it to make a rustic looking picture frame or display.
Yeah.
You could do lots of things with it. You could, if you got really good at it, you could probably, hand letter larger quotes on your walls, like as part of decor.
Like right onto the wall.
Yeah, and what you would do is you would actually use the pen, because I mean, essentially, if you want to repaint, you just paint over it. It's not gonna, Yeah,
I have a friend at work who did that. He did in his new house he bought. He does a lot of art, and he just painted the art right, like directly onto the wall.
Yeah. See, now I feel like that would be hard, because depending on the size of your wall, how big you'd want it, you'd have to do a lot of other things other than just freehanding it.
Yeah.
You'd have to probably take a pencil and a big, long meter stick to help you get things straight lines and make sure you have the right size and all that. So I feel like I'm a long way from that. But right now, just doing quotes on, like, paper is pretty fun.
Yeah.
I feel like I could easily do, like, an 8x10 size of a sign, or, like, maybe, like, a 11x14 at the biggest. But anything bigger than that, I feel like my lines would be off.
Okay. So is it harder to do the larger? Like, is it harder as it gets bigger?
Yeah, because your spacing is really important.
Okay. Is there anything you've learned as far as spacing goes? And
I've kind of learned that the small words like the, to, and like my, like small words like 2-letter words or 3-letter words are, you always want to make those smaller and most likely in different writing. So like a different font style of the hand lettering. The main part of your quote is what you're going to want to make large, but you're going to want to pick key words out of that quote to make it pop out.
Okay.
And so you'll essentially have 3 different sizes with your words.
What's the third size? So you said
it would be like an in-between size. Yeah, like a medium.
And so if you use the big size for the important words and then the small size for like the little words, like 2 and 3-letter words, what would be the third size for?
It would be a size in between those 2 sizes.
So that's like the size, but what would you use it for though? Like less important words? Would that be the idea, or?
Well, say like you took a quote from the Bible, or okay, we'll do this quote.
Okay.
As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. It's a very popular quote. Everybody has it in their house, pretty much.
Yeah.
Even the ones that don't believe in God, but we'll just go. We'll just keep going. But, like, you would want Lord to obviously be a larger word.
Okay.
Like, you'd want Lord to be one of the bigger words in your quote.
Okay.
Right? And you would definitely want probably serve to be a bigger word.
Okay.
So, like, as for me and my...
Okay.
You'd probably have... Because as is the first word, you definitely want it to be a medium word. Like a medium-sized word.
Okay.
You wouldn't want it to be small just because it's the very first word.
Mm-hmm.
But for me and my, you would probably, because it's a long sentence, you would probably alternate between medium and small, if that's what you wanted to do. It would depend on how you'd want it to look. You could all make it medium. I would probably alternate with small and medium just to give it like a funkier
and then have like
look.
1 or 2 words that are larger to stand out.
Right.
Okay.
And well, not just 1 or 2, but like house.
Okay. Yeah.
House would probably be a larger word because it's important in that quote. And then like we will would be medium size. And then serve would be a larger one. And then the would be small. And then Lord would be your big word.
Yeah. Okay.
And you definitely want Lord to be probably the biggest word in that quote, but not so big that it overpowers.
Yeah.
So it would just depend on, what your preference is, how you'd want it to look. There are multiple different variations you could do. But I feel like in most quotes, you will have anywhere between 2 to 3 different sizes and 2 to 3 different fonts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I assume you started by copying others that already existed?
Yeah, I'll be on my phone on Pinterest and I'll just kind of look at my phone and then just try to mimic it.
Okay. And then after you did enough of those, you kind of felt comfortable with maybe coming up with some of your own, with doing your own fonts and sizes and layouts?
Yeah, I've done a few. I think that the ones that I have done have turned out pretty well. I haven't tried a really long quote, though.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them are short, just to start out as easy, I guess. I don't know how I'd do with a really long quote because you only have so much space in the book that I'm writing in to practice.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll just go on Pinterest and...
So, when did you first learn how to do this? I know you took a class, like a Friday night class type thing.
I feel like I've tried to hand letter for a long time, and I really didn't figure out. It was basically what I was doing wrong is I was using all the wrong things.
Like the wrong materials and stuff?
Wrong materials, wrong writing utensils, everything,
Okay.
you know. Which, I mean, you really just need to start with what you're supposed to use, and then you can master things that are harder, like a paintbrush.
Kind of become more flexible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like once you get a feel for the felt tip, maybe I could move on to like a paintbrush or, you know, other things like chalk markers for like chalkboards.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like those paint pens that they make as well. And even things like people can use pencils and they may not be able to do it in one swoop, but they have a template and a structure to it, making it look nice and clean.
Yeah.
Which I have not mastered that. So,
yeah.
Because before I would, you know, kind of cheat and use stencils, or I would freehand the best I could and basically go back and fill in a bunch. And, you know, depending on your patience, your hand, how steady it is, sometimes it would turn out shaky looking. And sometimes it would look really smooth and clean, which is what you want.
Okay.
You don't want it to look shaky, or it looks... Basically, you're going for the effect of... You want it to look like it was made in a store. You don't want it to look handmade.
Yeah.
When you have the shaky look, it doesn't look as pristine.
So you mentioned that you said the most important part for you was getting the right materials.
Yep.
So one of those was the felt tip pens, and then kind of getting good with that and then expanding from there. Were there any other materials that you were using incorrectly that then you learned the right thing to use?
I don't think so. They do make hand lettering paper that is very specific for hand lettering, but you don't have to use it because it's really more of like you use it in order to save your ink. So if I use like a normal, like, I don't even know what kind of paper it is. It's almost cardstock. It's like like a normal like sketchbook, like that kind of paper.
Yeah.
It's not thick, but I don't even know how to explain it. But like if you buy a normal sketchbook, your pages aren't very thin. They're a little more durable for like the graphite pencils and things like that.
Yeah.
But if you use a felt pen on it, it's the felt pen just absorbs in that paper, so it takes more ink.
Okay.
So your felt pen, if you're just using that kind of paper, your felt pen's not going to last.
Okay.
Things like computer paper or the type of paper that you're supposed to use.
Yeah.
Is really the best option. Even computer paper is kind of iffy because you don't really want paper that you can see through it.
Yeah.
You don't want it to bleed through.
So the paper needs to be thick, but it doesn't. You don't want it to be absorbent.
Yeah.
Like with a graphite pencil, it's not like the pencil isn't absorbing, but with a felt tip pen, it is.
Right.
So you want the thick, durable paper, but not the absorbance type of
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting because if you really are into art and drawing and doing different things like what I like to do, you kind of learn that there are specific papers for everything. You have watercolor paper for watercolor painting. You have like the professional sketchbooks meant for graphite pencils, or like a professional coloring pencil that has a graphite sense to it. You got hand lettering, which has specific hand lettering paper, which, I mean, when you draw, you can use computer paper and it could turn out really good.
Yeah.
But if you want more of a professional style to it, you would use the things you're supposed to use.
Yeah.
So
the first most important thing is get the felt tip pen to start learning, and then also get the paper for some of these other benefits. Is there any other peripheral utensils, tools, devices that maybe at that class maybe they had that helped or anything?
She did show us some examples of some things that we could, potentially buy, which, but we didn't use them. We just kind of looked at them. All can be ordered from like Amazon. They're really cheap too. It's not like it's super high-end brand. You look up stuff for hand lettering and it can be like super expensive. And the stuff she ordered was I think it was in either Chinese or Japanese. You can't understand a word.
Yeah.
What they say, but it's what you need. It's
not. And you're talking about like something that was on Amazon, or something that she ordered independently of that.
Like our felt pens are written in Japanese or Chinese, like all over the pen.
Maybe I'll find the after this. I'll find the brand or whatever, and I'll make sure to post it or whatever along with.
Yeah, I have it on my Amazon account. I just don't remember what it's called. But she showed us like.
So pen, but was there any other things?
Yeah, there's chalk markers. There are specific chalk markers meant for hand lettering. Like if you have a chalkboard.
Okay.
And you wanted to put a pretty sign on it because it's in your house. There are specific chalk markers out there that are meant for hand lettering.
Okay.
Because if you just, like I said, it's all based off the tip of your utensil that you're using. And I think most people prefer the flexible tip because you get that really thick line and then you can go really thin really fast.
Okay.
And make it a smooth transition as you're writing a word.
So you said that you've always been interested in essentially like pretty writing, but that once you got the right materials in that class kind of really helped you. What do you think as far as learning, getting better at it and so forth? Is there what's kind of the next step or the future of learning? I mean, other than practicing, but is there anything in particular?
I think, like I said earlier, like mastering different textures.
And texture, you mean different types of paper?
Paper, wood.
Okay.
You could do like a pot, like for planting plants in. Okay. You could do like multiple textures. You could do
the wall, like we talked about.
You could do the wall. You could do your end tables. Like say you were refinishing an end table and you wanted to do something fun on top and then polyurethane it over that. You could do that. There are so many different textures you can master. It's kind of hard to pinpoint. I think the big ones, the most popular ones, would definitely be like chalkboard.
Yeah.
Wood.
So basically, start with the felt pen with the right paper. Practice on that a bunch, and then you can just kind of start expanding out into different materials, different utensils, different surfaces, and get better at the different things. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So what? Kind of to change gears a little bit, what benefits? I mean, obviously you enjoy art. So there's reasons that you enjoy art. But what kind of benefits do you feel like this has had for you? Like, as far as, I don't know, whether it be something, like I know you do it in the evenings. I've seen you do it in the evenings. So something to relax, get your mind off things, anything like that.
I definitely feel like it's a de-stressor.
Yeah.
For me. Also because I have that mindset that it's not going to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if I were to make a sign for somebody and use my hand lettering, I'd be a little more stressed.
Yeah.
But when you have a little journal specifically made for hand lettering and doing quotes and fun things like that, it's more relaxing than anything. I can kind of take my mind off of being pregnant for 30 minutes or so, and that's a nice feeling.
So I know, because over the last couple of years, I every once in a while will get the urge to draw. And I always want you to draw with me, but very often you don't because it stresses you out. So what do you think's different about the hand lettering that lets you relax, whereas when you try to draw, you get stressed? Is it just the pressure of doing well, or?
I think that because I have a specific sketchbook, I want my sketchbook to look pretty. So whatever I'm drawing in my sketchbook, I want, like, when I finish that sketchbook, I want to be able to go through it and be proud of what I did.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just like you're drawing on computer paper, and if you mess up, you can throw that page away.
Yeah.
In a sketchbook, you don't want to rip your pages out.
Yeah.
So I feel like for me, that's a stress factor. But also, when you draw something, you're taking a lot more time and putting more effort into it.
Yeah.
With shading and other things, coloring it, whatever you're doing with it. It takes, an hour or more. I think, some people it takes days.
Yeah.
I kind of don't draw like that anymore. I used to draw, and it would take me a week to do a drawing.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd be really awesome, But how many times did I get stressed during that week?
Yeah.
A lot. Whereas, like, the hand lettering, you pick a quote. Most of mine are short.
Yeah.
I don't do long ones right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quick. It's quick and easy. Once you get the hang of it, you just kind of smoothly go along and, maybe 20 minutes tops, depending on what quote you're doing.
Yeah.
But that's once you get the groove of, going from thick line to thin line
Mm-hmm.
through your words and just getting the groove of it. So I think that it's a lot quicker and more patient with it because it's quicker.
So, like, essentially the risk of failure is less. Because if you fail, you wasted 10 minutes and you can try again.
Right.
Versus you spent the whole evening or multiple evenings on drawing. And then if you feel like you failed, then it can be frustrating.
Yeah. And also, like, having your own specific journal for hand lettering and knowing it's meant for practice.
Okay. So expectation setting
also helps, because if I had the idea of this whole book has to be pretty, then I'm gonna get stressed about it.
Yeah.
Which is how my sketchbooks are. If my pages aren't pretty, it stresses me out because I feel like I have to rip out that page, but you don't want to rip out that page because it's a nice solid book.
Mm-hmm.
So
I my idea, some ideas are turning my head. I could imagine if you got a book to practice the hand lettering in, which was the right material. You got the felt tip pens, which were the right type of pens to use. I imagine, I'm just kind of throwing out some ideas, if you just did a few pages where it was not intentionally like bad, but where you just went through it and your expectations were very low, then you've kind of set the standard that, okay, the hand lettering I do in this book, there's going to be some good and there's going to be some bad, and I don't need to rip out the bad because I've already done some bad. As opposed to like doing the first page super pristine, taking a lot of time on it, and now you feel like every other page has to also be that good or better.
Well, that's the cool thing about hand lettering, because there are so many different fonts out there. So say you do mess up and it looks messy.
Mm-hmm.
If you go on Pinterest or you go in Hobby Lobby, you have messy hand lettering everywhere. Not everything is pretty and, cursive.
So, like, essentially the difference between messed up and intentionally artistic can sometimes...
It can sometimes mesh. I think that there is a fine line of where it does looks a little too messy.
Yeah.
But I think that's more of if your hand is too shaky, and your lines aren't looking smooth. I think that's the biggest thing. I think that if you have shaky hands, you're not going to like your hand lettering naturally. But otherwise, if you just if you get the placement wrong, or maybe you're doing some extra color in it and it doesn't look quite right to you, as long as your lines are smooth, I think that you're good to go. Because with hand lettering, there are multiple different fonts.
Yeah.
There's messy.
So the font might not be what you intended, but it still looks okay.
Yeah.
And for shaky hands and stuff, I know, a couple thoughts. I know that doing art can be helpful for a lot of people. And a lot of people can be frustrated when they are not very good at it. But I feel like a lot of times that's what they begin with. So if you start with drawing, for example, to get to the point with drawing where you would be proud to show other people your drawing, that's a lot of work. So if you're looking for some kind of the therapeutic benefits of doing art, being able to relax in the evening, painting is not the first place to start.
But no, definitely not.
But hand lettering would, could be a very good place to start because, like you said, it's quick. You can do the same thing 2 or 3 times in a row, and maybe the third one's really great. And then
I think it could be therapeutic for your emotions too. If you have a bad day, pick a bad quote. How you feel. If you feel like the day sucks.
It's so combining journaling with hand lettering and art. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, well, a lot of people do it.
Yeah, a lot. You journal out your emotions and stuff.
Yep. So, if your day sucked, you just say, "My day sucked," and you can hand letter that.
Or something more.
Well, sometimes you just want it simple.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't want to go into the fine details. You just want to say, "Today sucked. Tomorrow will be better."
With shaky hands, I know too that sometimes people have shaky hands at different times of the day. And so sometimes, if you try to do your art at a specific time of the day, and that happens to be the time of the day where your hands are shakiest, then...
and some people just have shaky hands.
Well, yeah, for some people, their hands are always shaky. But...
yeah. Well, for me, because, if I draw, and you tell me to do a circle, or, a square, with straight lines, I'm always erasing...
yeah.
and perfecting my circle.
Mm-hmm.
It's never a perfect circle. It's never a perfect square.
Yeah.
Both hand lettering, when I was doing if you do a workbook page and you're tracing things, you're going to be shaky just because you're trying to trace.
Essentially match perfection because the traces are perfect.
Mm-hmm. But if you don't focus on that, it's... and if you don't have naturally shaky hands, you're okay for most part.
Okay. Cool. Well, I learned a whole bunch. I legitimately learned a lot. So that's cool.
Yeah, I think I learned a little much too.
Yeah. Learned some just talking
just talking through it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for informing us on your endeavor into The art of hand lettering. Any last words?
You're welcome.
All right.
Is it off?
Well, I'm going to have to... It's not off yet because I always have trouble stopping.